about the International Criminal Court, which was taken from the website of the International Criminal Court. The social problem statement for the International Court is that there's a need for a mechanism to investigate and prosecute grave crimes against humanity and other human rights violations. A quote from the website is that the court is participating in the global fight to end impunity, and through international criminal justice, the court aims to hold those responsible accountable for their crimes and to help prevent these crimes from happening again. The conceptual problem statement is: how can the international community hold perpetrators of human rights violations accountable and address impunity? And another quote from the website: as a court of last resort, it seeks to complement, not replace, national courts. Social gap that the court fills is accountability, the ability to provide accountability for grave human rights violations. Conceptual gap is addressing the lack of international buy-in to the ICC. That's the kind of the overwhelming problem associated with the International Criminal Court. A little bit of an introduction to the court. There's 900 staff members. The headquarters are housed at The Hague in the Netherlands. The 2023 budget for the court was 169,649,200 euros, which is considerable. Over the course of the court's criminal proceedings, which started in 2006, 31 cases have been tried, 40 arrest warrants issued, and 10 convictions and 4 acquittals. The framework for the International Criminal Courts, essentially the International Criminal Court aims to be a neutral court that can hold nations, leaders, and other powerful individuals accountable for their crimes against humanity. The court's methodology, or the court's jurisdiction, is over the 4 following areas: genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of aggression, which is defined by the use of armed force by a state against the sovereignty, integrity, or independence of another state. The court only prosecutes cases when states are not willing or unable to process these cases themselves. The court's methodology: they conduct preliminary examinations. If those show the need for a full investigation is conducted. Pre-trial preparations are made. Trials are held. There's an appeals process, and then there's enforcement of sentencing. The challenge is that enforcement of sentencing relies on the cooperation of the international community to enforce the court's decisions. The makeup of the court: there's the Assembly of State Parties, which there are over 100 states that are have representatives appointed to the court. There are 4, and that state assembly is kind of the Assembly of States is kind of a parliamentary rules making and oversight body for the court. The 4 divisions of the court are the presidency, the judicial divisions, the office of the prosecutor, and the registry. The court also has a trust fund for victims to compensate them for their experiences. A quote from the president of the ICC Assembly: I reiterate the importance of redoubling our efforts to ensure the continued expansion of the family of states that cooperate to fight against impunity and to protect the victims of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. A bit of a summary of the court. The court has has offices in 6 countries, or six, I guess, 6 offices in country. So there's an office in the Central African Republic, an office in Cote d'Ivoire. There are 2 offices in the Democratic Republic of Congo, one in Kinshasa and one in Benin. There's an office in Kenya, and there's an office in Uganda. These offices are primarily there because there are ongoing investigations in those countries and locations, which, when you look at the greater landscape of global geopolitical crimes against humanity, aggression, all of those things, the fact that there's only these 6 offices is kind of problematic when you start looking at Ukraine, uh, Palestine, Myanmar, Sudan, some of these other places. So it's interesting that only these 6 countries are have offices. The total budget since inception is more than 2.4 billion euro, for a total of 10 convictions, as we discussed before. The contribution of the court, it provides a mechanism for prosecution of grievous crimes against humanity, has had moderate but limited success, provides a space for international cooperation and discourse on human rights and crimes against humanity. The shortcomings of the court is that it has no teeth. Enforcement relies on the international community, and global superpowers refuse to cooperate or engage. Uh, it lacks the power to take on imperialist tendencies of global superpowers and deal with the impunity that they grant to their friends and allies. Shortcomings of the court continued. The investigation offices are all in Africa, um, which kind of indicates that they are choosing to address visible offenses by people and nations who lack the protection of global superpowers. Uh, there's an obvious inequity of power, which leaves the court ineffective and largely meaningless on a global geopolitical scale. And the court has a tendency to push for historic rulings that they hope will set a precedent. And when they fail, when these efforts fail, then they often also fail to get a conviction on these cases. And this is a quote from John Silverman, who wrote an article on the BBC website. Uh, a failing common to many of the international tribunals, which is that he's saying that the ICC also has a failing common to many of the international tribunals, which is a tendency by the prosecution to have one eye on the bar of history by presenting an overblown case rather than one which is more tightly focused and can be completed within a realistic time scale. Recommendations: global power imbalances must be addressed to improve effectiveness and avoid the pursuit of historic precedent setting victories and focus on successful prosecutions. Final kind of summary graph. The key points: the court's first case was in 2006. The court's one of the main strengths is to be able to take on cases that national courts refuse to take. The weakness is that it has no enforcement power, and a recommendation is to improve buy-in from global superpowers. Jurisdiction over genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of aggression is another key point, key aspect of the International Criminal Court. The capacity to investigate these crimes independently is a strength. Its lack of power to enforce rulings is, again, the same weakness as before. And the fact that it is ignored by global superpowers who support the impunity of their friends and allies is a challenge that needs to be addressed in terms of recommendations. Uh, Another key point is it has a massive budget, which gives it the capacity to operate independently. But that same massive budget also means that there's a high cost for minimal results. So there's a need for greater enforcement frameworks and greater efficiency and effectiveness within the court. Another key point again is that there's 10 convictions so far in the history of the court. And so it has begun the process of setting a precedent in terms of that impunity will not be tolerated for these crimes. However, the minimal success leaves considerable room for improvement, and the increase in effectiveness is needed to make progress in addressing impunity.